Chapter 5. At one time, conversation led on to a point where one of our party asked where hell was and what the devil meant. Jesus turned quickly and said, "Hell, or the devil, has no abiding place, except in man's mortal thought. Both of them are just wherever man places them. With your present enlightenment, can you place either in any geographical position on earth? If heaven is all and surrounds all, where could hell or the devil be placed ethereally? If God rules all and is all, where could either be placed in God's perfect plan? If we take the science of things, we know there is a legend told here that all the heat and light and many other natural forces are contained right within the earth itself. The sun of itself has no heat or light. It has potentialities that draw the heat and light from the earth. After the sun has drawn the heat and light rays from the earth, the heat rays are reflected back to the earth by the atmosphere that floats in the ether. The light rays are drawn from the earth in about the same manner and are reflected back to the earth by the ether. As the air extends only a comparatively short distance, the effect of the heat rays varies as you leave the earth's surface and ascend toward the outer limit of the atmosphere. As the air becomes less dense, there is less reflection. Consequently, as you ascend into the higher altitudes, the heat becomes less and the cold increases. Every heat ray, as it is drawn out and reflected, drops back to the earth where it is regenerated. When you have reached the limit of air, you have reached the limit of heat. It is the same with the light rays. They are drawn from the earth and reflected back by the ether. As this ether extends much further from the earth than the air, the light rays extend much further before they are all reflected. When you have reached the limit of ether, you have reached the limit of light. When you have reached the limit of heat and light, you have reached the great cold. This cold is far more solid than steel, and it presses down upon the ether and the atmosphere with almost irresistible force and holds them together. Hell is supposed to be warm, and its satanic majesty abhors cold, so you could not find any lodging place out there for them. Now that we have disposed of them above, let us take the other scientific legend and go below. According to this legend, the earth a short distance from the surface is a molten mass. It is so hot that it will melt any substance. This molten mass at the center revolves more slowly than does the crust at the outer, and the belt where the two meet is the place where the natural forces are generated, and there, again, the hand of God rules all. So there is not place for his satanic majesty or his home there. For if he attempted to live in either the hottest or the coldest place, he would find it very uncomfortable, since cold will consume as well as heat. We have searched every place and we cannot find him a home, so we must assume that he is right where man is and has all the power that man gives him. It was only the personal adversary that I cast out. Do you think for a moment that I would cast the devil of any man and then allow him to enter a herd of swine that cast themselves into the sea? I never saw the devil in any man, save he brought him there himself. The only dominion I ever gave him was that which man himself gave him. Later the talk led to God, and one of our parties said, "I would like to know who or what God really is." Then Jesus spoke and said, "I believe that I understand the motive of the question you would like to clear up in your mind. It is the many conflicting thoughts and ideas that are puzzling or disturbing the world today, without reference to the origin of the word. God is the principle behind everything that exists today. The principle behind the thing is spirit. and Spirit is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omnipotent. God is the one mind that is both the direct and the directing cause of all the good that we see about us. God is the source of all the true love that holds or binds all forms together. God is impersonal principle. God is never personal except as he becomes to each individual a personal, loving father-mother. To the individual he can be a personal, loving, all-giving father-mother. God never becomes a great being located somewhere in the skies, in a place called heaven, where he has a throne which he sits upon and judges people after they die. For God is the life itself, and that life never dies. That is but a misconception brought about by man's ignorant thinking, just as so many malformations have been brought about, and you see them in the world around you. God is not a judge or a king who can intrude his presence upon you or bring you before the bar of justice. God is a loving, all-giving father-mother who, when you approach, puts out his arms and enfolds you. It does not matter who or what you are or what you have been. You are his child just the same as when you seek him with a true heart and a purpose. If you are the prodigal son who has turned his face from the Father's house, and you are weary of the husk of life that you are feeding to the swine, you can again turn your face to the Father's house and be certain of a loving welcome. The feast ever awaits you there. The table is always spread, and when you do return, there will not be a reproach from a brother that has returned before you. God's love is like a pure spring that gushes from a mountain. At its source it is pure, but as it flows on its course, it becomes clouded and polluted until it enters the ocean, so impure it does not even resemble that which emerged from the source. As it enters the ocean, it begins to drop the mud and slime to the bottom, and again rises to the surface as a part of the glad, free ocean, from which it again can be taken up to refresh the spring. You can see and talk with God at any time, just as you can with father, mother, brother, or friend. Indeed, he is far closer than any mortal can be. God is far dearer and truer than any friend. God is never wrought up, nor angry, nor cast down. God never destroys, nor hurts, nor hinders one of his children, or creatures, or creations. If God did these things, he would not be God. The God that judges, destroys, or withholds any good thing from his children or creatures is but a God, or creations, is but a God that is conjured up by man's ignorant thinking, and you need not fear that God unless you wish to do so. For the true God stretches forth his hand and says, "All that I have is yours." When one of your poets said that God is closer than breathing and nearer than hands or feet, he was inspired by God. All are inspired by God when that inspiration is for the good or the right, and all can be inspired by God at all times if they only will. When I said, "I am Christ, the only begotten of God," I did not declare this for myself alone. For had I done this, I could not have become the Christ. I say definitely that in order to bring forth the Christ, I, as well as all others, must declare it, then must live the life, and the Christ must appear. You may declare the Christ all you will, and if you do not live the life, the Christ will never appear. Just think, dear friends, if all would declare the Christ, then live the life for 1 year or 5 years, what an awakening there would be. The possibilities cannot be imagined. That was the vision that I saw. Dear ones, can you not place yourselves where I stood and see as I saw? Why do you not lift your eyes and minds and thoughts above those and see with a clear vision? Then you would see that there are no miracles, no mysteries, no pain, no imperfection, no inharmony, and no death. except that which man has made. When I said, I have overcome death, I knew whereof I spoke. But it took the crucifixion to show these dear ones. There are a great many of us joined together to help the whole world, and this is our life work. There have been times when it has taken our combined energies to ward off the evil thoughts of doubt and disbelief and superstition that have nearly engulfed mankind. You may call them evil forces if you wish. We know that they are evil only as man makes them so. But now we see the light growing brighter and brighter as the door. As the dear ones throw off the bonds. The throwing off of these bonds may for a time sink mankind into materiality, but even so, it is a step nearer the goal. For materiality does not hold one as superstition and myth and mystery hold one. When I stepped upon the water that day, do you think that I cast my eyes downward into the great depths, the material substance? No. I fastened my eyes steadfastly on God power that transcends any power of the deep. The moment I did this, the water became as firm as a rock, and I could walk upon it in perfect safety. Jesus stopped talking for a moment, and one of our party asked, "While we are talking, does it not hinder you from going right on with your work?" Jesus answered and said, "You cannot hinder one of our friends here for a moment, and I believe I am included as one of them." Someone spoke and said, "You are our brother." Then Jesus' face lighted up with a smile as he said, "Thank you. I have always named you brothers." One of the party then turned and asked Jesus, "Can all bring forth the Christ?" He answered, "Yes, there is but one end of accomplishment. Man came forth from God, and he must return to God. That which from the heavens descended must again ascend into heaven." The history of the Christ did not begin with my birth, neither did it end with the crucifixion. The Christ was when God created the first man in his own image and likeness. The Christ and that man are one. All men and that man are one. As God was his Father, so is he the Father of all men, and all are God's children. As the child has the quality of the parents, so the Christ is in every child. For many years the child lived and realized his Christhood, his oneness with God, through the Christ in himself. Then began the history of the Christ, and you can trace this history back to man's beginning. That the Christ means more than the man Jesus goes without contradiction. Had I not perceived this, I could not have brought forth the Christ. To me, this is the pearl without price, the old wine in new bottles, the truth which many others have brought forth and thus have fulfilled the ideas that I have fulfilled and proved. For more than 50 years after that day on the cross, I taught and lived with my disciples, and many of those I loved dearly. In those days we gathered at a quiet place outside Judea. There we were free from the prying eyes of superstition. There many acquired the great gifts, and they accomplished a great work. Then, seeing that by withdrawing for a time I would be able to reach and help all, I withdrew. Besides, they were depending upon me instead of upon themselves. And in order to make them self-reliant, it was necessary for me to withdraw from them. If they had lived in close association with me, then could they not find me again if they desired to do so? The cross was, in the beginning, the symbol of the greatest joy the world ever knew. The foundation of the cross is the place where man first trod the earth, therefore the mark that symbolizes the dawn of a celestial day here on earth. If you will trace it back, you will find that the cross disappears entirely, and that it is the man standing in the attitude of devotion, standing in space, with arms upraised in blessing, sending out his gifts to humanity, pouring all his gifts forth freely in every direction. When you know that the Christ is the fitting life within the form, the rising energy, that the scientist glimpses yet does not know whence it came. When you feel, with the Christ, that the life is lived so that life may be given freely, when you learn that man is obliged to live by the constant dissolution of forms, and that the Christ lived to give up the thing that the body of sense craved for the good that he could not at the moment enjoy, you are the Christ. When you see yourself a part of the greater life, but willing to sacrifice yourself for the good of the whole. When you learn to do right without being affected by the outcome to help. When you learn freely to give up physical life and all that the world has to give. This is not self-abnegation or poverty, for as you give of God, you will find you have the more to give, although at times duty may seem to demand all that life has to give. You will also know that he who will save his life shall lose it. Then you will see that the pure gold is in the deepest part of the furnace, where the fire has fully cleansed it. You will find great joy in knowing that the life you have given to others is the life you have won. You will know that to receive is to give freely, that if you lay down the mortal form, a higher life will prevail. You have the glad assurance that a life thus won is one for all. You must know that the great Christ's soul can go down to the river, and that the stepping into the water but typifies the sympathy you feel for the world's great need. Then you are able to help your fellow man and not boast of virtue. You can pass out the bread of life for the hungry souls that come to you, yet that bread never diminishes by the giving. You must press on and know fully that you are able to heal all that come to you, sick or weary or heavy laden, with the word that makes whole the soul. You are able to open the eyes of those blinded either from ignorance or from choice. It does not matter how low the blinded soul may be. He may feel that the Christ soul stands beside him, and he must find that you tread that with human feet the very ground he treads. Then you will know that the true unity of Father and Son is within and not without. You will know that you must stand serene when the God within is put away and only the God within remains. You must be able to withhold the cry of love and fear as the words, my God, why have you forsaken me?" ring out. Still, at that hour you must not feel alone, for you must know that you stand with God, that you are nearer to the heart of the loving Father than you have ever been before. You must know that the hour you touch the deepest sorrow is the hour in which your greatest triumph begins. With all this, you must know that sorrows cannot touch you. From that hour, your voice will ring with a great free song, for you fully know that you are the Christ, this light which is to shine among men and for men. Then you will know the darkness that is in every soul that cannot find a helping hand to clasp as he journeys on the rugged road before he finds the Christ within. You must know that you are truly divine, and being divine, you must see that all men are as you are. You will know that there are dark places you must pass with the light that you are to carry to the highest, and your soul will ring out in praise that you can be of service to all men. Then with a glad free shout you mount to your very highest in your union with God. Now you know that there is no substitution of your life for other lives or of your purity for others' sins, but that all are glad, free spirits in and of themselves and of God. You know that you can reach them while they cannot reach each other, that you cannot help giving of your life for the life of each soul, that it shall not perish. Yet you must be so reverent of that soul that you will not pour into it a flood of life, unless the life of that soul opens to receive it. But you will freely pour out to it a flood of love, life, and light, so that when that one does open the windows, the light of God will pour in and illuminate him. You will know that in every Christ that arises, humanity is lifted one step higher, Then too you must know full well that you have everything that the Father has, and having all, it is for all to use. You must know that as you rise and are true, you lift the whole world with you. For as you tread the path, it becomes plainer for your fellow man. You must have faith in yourself, knowing fully that that faith is God within. Finally, you must know that you are a temple of God, a house not made with hands, immortal in the earth and in heaven as well. They will then will they sing of you, all hail, he comes, the King, and lo, he is with you always. You are in God, and he is in you. Jesus arose, saying he would be obliged to leave us, as he was to be at the home of another brother in the same village that evening. The whole company arose. Jesus blessed all, and with two of the gathering walked from the room. Chapter 6. After we were again seated, one of our party turned to Emil and asked if all could acquire the art of healing. He said, the power to heal can be obtained only as we learn to trace things out from their source. Supremacy over every discord can come only in the degree that we understand that they do not come from God. The divinity that shapes your destinies is not a mighty person molding you as a potter molds his clay, but a mighty divine power within and all around you, and around and in all substance, which is yours to use as you will. If you do not realize this, you cannot have confidence in yourselves. The greatest cure for inharmony is the knowledge that it is not from God, and that God never did create it. The brain has the quality of receiving and recording the vibrations of any object that the eye conveys to it. The vibrations of the lights and shades and colors are all recorded. It also has the quality of reproducing these vibrations and projecting them out again, this time through the inner vision. Then we again see the picture the eye has conveyed. You are reproducing this in your camera every time you expose a sensitized plate. That place receives and records the vibrations that the object you wish to photograph sends out. After the vibrations are received and recorded on the plate, you must fix the results on the place if they are to become permanent so that you can see them. It will be only a short time before you will find that the movements and colors of the objects that you photograph can be recorded and projected by first fixing and then returning or projecting the lights and colors at the same rate of vibration at which they were received and fixed. It is the same with thought and word and act. Each selective set of brain cells takes up and records its corresponding set of vibrations. And when these vibrations are repeated and projected, they can be reproduced just as they took place if the cells are held directly to their duty. There's also another set of selective brain cells that can receive, record, and fix the vibrations of the thoughts, acts, motions, and pictures that other bodies of forms send out. These vibrations can be again reproduced and projected. You can so arrange these cells that you can reproduce the words and motions of these bodies or objects, and even the thoughts of those that send them out. Through these cells you can assist others as well as yourself to control their thoughts. It is through these cells that accidents and calamities are brought about, such as wars and earthquakes and floods and fires and all the trouble that mortal man is heir to. Someone either sees a thing happen or imagines it as happening. The corresponding vibration is fixed in the cells, sent out to be impressed on the corresponding cells of other brains, then again projected back, until the thing is so fixed that it happens. All these things can be avoided if the thought that sustains them is immediately withdrawn, and the vibrations are not allowed to be fixed upon those brain cells. so that those particular vibrations cannot be again projected. It is through this set of cells that all calamities are foretold. There is still another set of selective brain cells that receive, record, and fix the vibrations of the thoughts and activities of divine mind, wherein all the true vibrations are created and sent out. This divine mind, or God, pervades every substance and is always sending out divine and true vibrations. And if we hold these cells to their true office, we are able to receive and send out the same true and divine vibrations that we receive from divine mind. We do not have the divine mind, but we have the cells that receive and project the vibrations of the divine mind. There was a pause and deep silence. Then a picture appeared upon the wall of the room. It was still at first, but in a moment it became animated. And after the lapse of another moment, the scene began to change. Since scenes that could represent those enacted in any or all of the more prosperous business centers of the world came flooding in. While they were changing very rapidly, there was sufficient time for us to recognize and name many familiar places, and one in particular, a reproduction of the scenes enacted when we landed in Calcutta in December 1894. This was long before we had ever heard of the cinema or motion picture. Yet these pictures depicted and brought out all of the movements of the human form and other objects. These pictures continued to pour in at intervals of about 1 minute's duration for nearly an hour. While these pictures were passing, Email said, "These pictures represent the conditions that exist in the world today. You will note the air of general peace and prosperity that prevails over a greater portion of the earth. There is a reasonable amount of contentment. The people seem undisturbed and generally happy. But underneath there is a seething cauldron of discord, generated by man's own ignorant thinking. There is hate, intrigue, and discord among nations. Men are beginning to visualize great military establishments, the like of which were never before known on earth. While we are doing everything in our power to bring out the good, our combined efforts will not be sufficient to sway those that are determined to rule in their own might. If they are able to perfect and launch their diabolical plans, and this we fully expect they will do, for people and nations are sleeping just when they should be awake and thinking. Within a few years you will see enacted pictures like these." Then 10 or 12 war scenes came trooping by. They were scenes that we never dreamed could actually take place, and we gave them but little thought. Email continued, "We are hoping, almost against hope, that these can be averted. Time will tell, and these conditions are what we are hoping will prevail." The scenes of beauty and peace beyond all description came trooping past, and Email said, "These are scenes which all of you will see enacted, but we wish you would, insofar as possible, put the second series of pictures out of your minds, as that will help us more than you think." After a short pause, one of our party asked what the words "Lord God" implied. And Email continued, "The Lord God was used to designate the perfect being that the divine principle or God created to bring out his qualities here on earth. This being was created in the image and likeness of the divine principle, and had access to and could use everything that the divine principle had. This being was given power and dominion over every condition that existed upon the earth. This being had all the potentialities of the divine principle and the power to bring them forth, as long as he cooperated with the divine principle and developed the faculties that had been given him in the ideal way that the divine principle had planned or was holding in mind. This being was afterwards called Lord God, which meant expression in creative action or the law of God. This is the perfect being that the divine principle holds in mind for man to express. This is the divine and only man that the divine principle created. Man, or the spiritual side of his nature, has access to and can become this Lord God, or one man. This divine man afterwards became known as the Christ. He had dominion over heaven and earth and all things therein. Then the Lord God, using his power to create, did create other beings like unto himself. These beings were afterwards called sons of the Lord God, and their Creator was called Father, and the divine principle was called God. Here he paused for a moment and held out his hand, and almost immediately there was in it a large piece of plastic substance that resembled clay. This he placed on the table and began molding it into a form which afterwards took on the image of a beautiful human figure, about 6 inches in height. So deftly did he work that the image was finished in a very short time. After it was finished, he held it in both hands for a moment. Then he held it up and breathed upon it, and it became animated. He held it in his hands for a moment longer, then placed it on the table where it moved about. It acted so much like a human being that we never asked a question, but stood with our mouths and eyes wide open and stared. Emil spoke, quoting, "And the Lord God created man from the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and he became a living soul. Then sons of the Lord God created man from the dust of the ground, and they, with their creative ability, breathed the breath of life into the statue, and it became a living soul. The genius can do this with his pottery or handiwork. If he leaves the statue or picture as his hands form it, it is an image, and he has no responsibility. But if he goes on and uses his creative power to put life into it, his responsibility never ceases. He must keep watch of each of his creations, and they must be held in divine order. This is where man in one way lost contact with God. He made images like these, but he did not withdraw the life which he, in his ardor, had endowed them with, and they wandered over the earth without purpose or aim. Whereas, had he withdrawn the life he had endowed them with, there would have been but the statue, and his responsibility would have ceased." Here the image stopped moving, and Emil continued, "You have seen the clay in the hands of the potter, but it is man, not God, that is manipulating the clay. Had he created it from God's pure substance as he was created, it, like him, would have been a pure and true son. This will be much clearer to you after you have translated the first series of tablets. As it is late, I think you would like to retire." As soon as the last guest had departed, we prepared to retire, feeling that the last few days had been filled to overflowing.